Alright guys, welcome to my other sorcery deck tech video. So, I wanted to make this deck for the people who have really enjoyed sorcery, and I wanted you guys to understand that there's diversity in this game, so much so that we can make weird decks like this. I solely made this deck for fun, so, you know, you guys don't have to worry too much about the power scales and whatnot, but I'm presenting you guys a 4 avatar deck list. Yes, that's right. I'm saying 4 avatars. And you may be thinking, well, Jeff, you can only play 1 avatar in a deck. And my rebuttal to that is, you're right. You can only play 1 avatar in a deck. However, this deck list is basically, this is just the deck, and you can use either one of these avatars for your deck list. All of these basically do the exact same thing in some way, shape, or form. They just essentially give you card advantage. Deathspeaker, this is probably the one that we're going to highlight today because I felt like I went and leaned more towards this avatar. However, I made the deck list efficient so where you can use all of these avatars, and I want to show you each one. Let's start off with the Pathfinder. This one's pretty interesting because this is the only avatar in the entire game that doesn't have the ability to tap, play, or draw a site. Instead, it does have a little restriction. Your atlas can't contain duplicates, and you don't draw sites during your setup. And the reason why is because when you tap the Pathfinder, his ability allows you to play the top of your atlas, and he can immediately move to that location. That's pretty good because this card essentially makes it so every turn you're going to play a site, and you only have to focus on just drawing your spellbook. It kind of like lets a little bit of a load off of you because sometimes when you play the game, you have those situations where you need to decide, oh, well, should I draw an atlas? Or should I draw a spell? And this guy kind of takes that load off because you only just really have to focus on drawing your spellbook and using him to play your atlas. We have the Seer. So this guy does have the basic avatar ability of tap, play, or draw a site. And at the start of your turn, you can look at your next site or your next spell, and you can choose to put that on the bottom of your deck. It does exactly what a Seer would do, right? It kind of just sees into the future, and it helps with your draws. So, this guy's pretty good because you can look at like the top of your spellbook and rearrange it. However, you can still choose a draw from your site, and vice versa. So this guy definitely gives you some advantages. We play a lot of draw spells in this deck, so being able to, I guess, help and choose the cards that we're going to draw can really help determine the course of the game. We have the Sorcerer. So if you guys ordered the Alpha booster box, this guy comes in as a topper for the booster box, and you get it for free, and it's a foil. This guy is pretty good because, I mean, you can see here, it taps and either draws or play a site, or you can tap it to draw a spell. Just more card advantage. And enough said, this card is very simplified, and I feel like simplified cards are a little better, only because they keep the game simple. And of course, this guy is just nothing but card advantage. Now, let's talk onto the big boy here, the Deathspeaker. So this guy is very unique. Of course, he has the tap and play or draw site ability, and you may cast 1 dead minion each turn. What that means is that if you have a minion in either cemetery, you can cast it. So there's some good and bad news about this ability. So the good news is if this guy happens to be on death's door, you can cast the minion for free, which is pretty good. But here's the downside. When a minion is summoned this way, it's banished. So if you guys have played other TCGs, you may have come across some sort of graveyard or reanimator style deck. The person who invented this game I think that they saw into the future and knew that graveyard decks are going to be strong. So this is one way how they kind of can control that. So you guys are probably thinking, well, what's the point in bringing back a minion if it's just going to die or get banished? And you guys will see. You guys will see a lot of synergy more with this avatar than all the other ones. So I'm just going to leave these guys right here, and we'll just go ahead and get on to the deck list. So for the artifacts, of course, the one Philosopher Stone, gotta play it. And in this build, we're playing one of each of the cores. Of course, this might, like 90% of the time, is going to be just the standard in every deck. If your deck has a low mana curve, you can just play the cores based on your element. However, this deck plays several high mana cost cards, so having as much mana accelerants as possible will help in the long run. So there's the mana accelerants. And now, you guys probably haven't seen these cards in my other decks, and I have my reasons for that. However, I'm glad that I can showcase these cards today. We have the Mix Air, Mix Ignis, and Mix Aqua. In short, you guys know how Philosopher's Stone is basically the new Black Lotus of this game. These cards are literally Black Lotus. And this is how. In Black Lotus, it's a 0 mana cost artifact. You sacrifice it, you get 3 mana. Sure, these cards aren't 0 mana cost. However, you sacrifice them. The next spell of the current element that it represents costs 3 less to cast and has no threshold. So what that means is, if I were to cast like my next air spell, I can sacrifice Mix Air, and now the next air spell that I try to cast has no threshold and costs 3 less. This essentially is providing you 3 mana. Some decks are going to find ways to abuse this, and I feel like some decks can or can't use this. However, in this build, we definitely want to play one of each. I tried originally playing 2 airs and 1 Ignis, but I found out that just having the Aqua was kind of crucial because we also play Aqua spells. We do play Earth spells, and you could play the Mix Terra. However, we don't have that many in this deck, and it's not worth playing it. So, be on the lookout for these cards. I feel like later down the road, these cards might be really overpowered, but only time will tell. For now, we're just playing them to help cast our spells. Now, going into our minions, we are playing... Oh, hold on a second. We are playing 4 Apprentice Wizard, sorry. 3 Cauldron Crones, and 3 Fey Changeling. So, this is probably, if not the best spellcaster in the entire game right now, other than Grandmaster Wizard. Spellcaster, of course, it allows you to cast spells, and it has Genesis. When it enters play, you draw a card. Cauldron Crones, it's also a spellcaster, and it also has Genesis. It says you may sacrifice another minion here in this location to draw a spell. So, pretty decent, and I'll explain more on this card later. Next, we have the 3 Fey Changeling. If you wanted to play 4 of these, I would maybe take 1 out, but for now I'm doing the 3 and 3 to see how it works. Fey Changeling can be summoned to either site, and it can return a minion at that site's location back to the owner's hand. We can target ourselves. So for example, we can target the Apprentice Wizard, we can cast it to draw a spell, and then if we cast a Fey Changeling, we can return this back to our hand, so then that way the next time we cast it, we can draw another spell off of it. It is hefty on mana, so you want to always be aware of that, and that's why the mana accelerants are so crucial. However, you can also use this to bounce your opponent's minions and kind of control the board state. We have 2 Selfsame Simulacrum. I wish that this card was at 4. You can only unfortunately have 2 in the deck at a time, which I think honestly for the developers is probably a smart move. When this minion comes in play, it comes in play as a copy of any nearby minion, so you can copy the Fey Changeling, return a card back to the hand, copy the Apprentice Wizard, draw a card, or even copy the Cauldron Crones, sacrifice another minion and draw a card. Some good value there. We have 2 Clamor of Harpies. I originally loved playing this card at 3, But in this build, I wanted to only play 2. It has Airborne and it has Genesis. When it enters play, you target a weaker minion and teleport it to the location of the Clamor Harpies, and then the Clamor Harpies can strike it. It's pretty good because it almost guarantees that you're going to kill any minion that's weaker than it. And of course, with the Selfsame Simulacrum, you can always copy it for more removal. This, I think, is a must if you're not playing aggro decks. Daperyll Vampire, and I want to stress upon this, when you're on Death's Door, it's really hard to get out of Death's Door, but having life gain can essentially put you back into the game. And that's why this card is very crucial. I would almost say you can play more of these if you really are worried about aggro decks, but of course having the Selfsame Simulacrum, copying it, giving you more lifelink or life gain will be really crucial. Next card is Grandmaster Wizard, probably, if not the second best spellcaster currently. Of course, it has the spellcaster ability and it has Genesis. When it enters play, you draw 3 cards. Absolutely insane card value. It's really strong. We have Death Dealer. Genesis comes in play, kill all other minions. All of them, except this guy. Pretty good. Really strong. You only have 1 in your deck, unfortunately, but really good card. Now, this is a tech choice. I'm playing 1 Nightmare. It's just a big creature with a really insane ability. At the end of your turn, each enemy minion at the location that Nightmare is at, you can push it adjacent to another location or the void. And if the minion doesn't have Void Walk, if it's pushed into the void, it's banished. It's gonzo. So this guy can practically like kill any minion it wants to if it's in the right setting. And of course, having 6 power can also kind of like aggro the game. Again, this is just a tech for me. If you guys don't want to play this, you can play another Daperyll Vampire, and I think that's probably the better move. However, only time will tell, and of course I built this deck for fun, so we'll get on to those later. Now, we're going to go on to a lot of fun stuff here in the Spellbook, if I can pick up my cards here. I am just going to go ahead and set aside a few cards here, just for example purposes. So I'm going to leave these here. Going to go on to our spells. We have the Dream Quest. I honestly just recently found out about this card, and I added it to all of my decks. It's absolutely insane. So for starters, an allied spellcaster falls asleep. It's disabled until it's hurt. At the start of the next turn, if it's still asleep, you can wake up the spellcaster and search your spellbook for any card. Now note, all your avatars are spellcasters by default. So that means that at the start of the game, if you have, your avatar, you tap it to play a site. You now have 1 mana. Now you can play Dream Quest. You can target your avatar, disable it and put it to sleep. And since it's at the start of the game, for this example, if your opponent doesn't have sites that connect to this, it's going to be really hard for them to reach your avatar. And especially if this is on the first turn, more than likely they don't have something on their first turn to target this, which is great, because then that means on your next turn, when this wakes up, before you draw a card, you can search your spellbook for any card. That's really crucial. It fixes dead hands, and it can potentially just draw you out some really strong stuff. We have Drown and Bury, just simple removal. It submerges a minion or artifact, and this burrows a minion or artifact if it can. We have 2 Cave In. It's essentially Bury, however, it can bury all minions and all artifacts at a target location. It's really good. If your opponent has Philosopher Stones and cores under their avatars, and if they just decide to put it all in one location, boom, you just go ahead and just wreck them with this. It's really strong. I actually think that's my favorite play to do with Cave In. Okay, so I'm going to be honest. You guys don't have to play this card. I made this deck for fun, and I think that this card can be interesting. Essentially what it says is you summon a random dead minion. Now, summon isn't cast. Summon is just placing it straight from the cemetery in play. However, if your opponent has minions as well in their cemetery, you have to kind of select it at random. Usually what I would say is for an example, you politely ask your opponent if you can borrow all their minions in their graveyard, and then you select your minion in your graveyard. And how I usually do it is I shuffle them up, I lay them out in the field, and so for this example we have 3 cards. So I'll roll a 6-sided dice, and I'll identify these based on a number. So let's say 2, 4, and 6. So I roll the dice, and let's say if it rolls on 2. Since I identified this for 2, 4, and 6, yep. So this will be the card that I select, and it'll be resurrected. So that's how you can randomly determine the minion. The order of the graveyard doesn't matter, or at least that's what they state in the rulebooks. So shuffling them all up and finding a best way to fairly select the card is pretty good. Now, if your opponent has bad minions, this card's bad. But if you have good minions in your graveyard, it could be good. There is a way in this deck to where you can somewhat control your target for this, and that's with the Deathspeaker. So Deathspeaker, when you cast the minion back, it gets banished, so that guarantees that it's not placed back into the graveyard. If you use Deathspeaker to revive your opponent's minions, and if they no longer have any minions in their graveyard because you banished them, when you use the Raise Dead, it gives you a better chance of resurrecting the cards that you want to resurrect. Now, any card in this deck is worth resurrecting because of the Genesis ability, or, of course, if you happen to have a Nightmare in your graveyard and bring it back, it's super sweet. This card, again, you don't have to play this. You can play like literally anything else, but for just the theme of the deck, I wanted to try it out, and sometimes it's just really fun. Having that gambling, randomized luck effect in a game is really fun, because you leave it to chance, you know? Okay, we gotta talk about this card. I found out about this card the other day, and I think it's actually insane. I'm glad it's a unique, because you can only play one. So this is Pact with the Devil. It says, sacrifice the caster, or lose half your life rounded up. If you pay either of these costs, you draw 3 cards. Now, yes, your avatar is a spellcaster, and this is the only part I don't understand. I don't believe you can sacrifice this as a caster. If you do, I think you just lose, right? Or it may not just allow you to sacrifice it. I don't think that's an actual game action. So you will have to be forced to lose half your life rounded up. Or at least I believe. If any of you guys can answer that for me, I'd really appreciate it, because that's the only confusing part about this card that I don't understand. However, that aside, most of the time we're not going to cast this on our avatar anyways. And let me give you an example. So we have an Apprentice Wizard here, right? When we cast it, we of course draw a card from its Genesis ability. And if we have enough mana to play Pact with the Devil, we can identify this as the spellcaster casting Pact with the Devil, and we can sacrifice the Apprentice Wizard for its cost to draw 3 cards. So we drew 4 cards for 7 mana. That's not too bad. Card advantage is card advantage. And I think Pact with the Devil is just an insane card. I will explain more in depth on this card and why it's great, besides, of course, card advantage. We have Poison Nova. This card, when you use it to identify your spellcaster, so if you have this and like all around it you have like 5 minions or something, you identify this as the spellcaster and you deal 1 damage to everything that's nearby the identified spellcaster. Now this card is lethal, so any damage dealt to any minion is enough to kill it. It's pretty strong. Sometimes your avatar is all the way in the back, and sometimes your opponent doesn't have minions nearby it. So that's why this deck is pretty good, because if you have more spellcasters, it just allows you to expand your regions, and it makes these spells a little bit more convenient. And honestly, that's why we're not playing too many drowns or too many berries. It's because this card just does a better job at removing minions. Alright, now we're getting into some serious stuff. So we have the Atlas. So this Atlas right here, you guys don't really have to go buy it. I'm only having 1 copy of each card just for the sake of running Pathfinder, just so I can show you guys that this deck can operate with 1 copy of each site. However, if you decide to go with Deathspeaker or any of these 2, you can alterate this however you need to. And I think it would be pretty interesting to see. I think it would be pretty interesting to see what you guys come up with in the future. So let's talk about the most important site in this entire deck, the Geistwood. If you guys have watched my previous videos, I kind of explained a little bit on what this card does and how good it is. So let me just throw out like the meanest scenario at you guys, all right? Let's say I have 10 mana, you know, just 10 mana, you know, and I have the Geistwood here. If I cast a Grandmaster Wizard on the Geistwood, the Genesis ability is going to trigger. I draw 3 cards. Now, the Geistwood says that all Genesis abilities at this location are also Deathrite abilities. So what that means is if this Genesis card dies, it reactivates his Genesis effect. So that means with the 4 remaining mana, if I cast Pact with the Devil and identify the Grandmaster Wizard as its target, I can sacrifice the caster, draw 3 cards from the Pact of the Devil, and since the Grandmaster Wizard died on the Geistwood, I'll reactivate the Genesis ability. So if we count 3, 6, 9 cards we just drew off of this one play. 10 mana to draw 9 cards is pretty good. And I'm just saying, if we have the Deathspeaker to just cast the Grandmaster Wizard, it'll also give us another 3 cards. That's 12 cards in total. However, I want you guys to understand this. When you bring this back with Deathspeaker, it will be banished, and that's different from Deathrite. So it won't be placed into the cemetery. However, you still get the value of drawing 3 more cards. But yeah, these cards together with the Geistwood or just any Genesis effect with this is just insane, dude. It's probably one of my favorite sites, I'm not even going to lie. Next to Mirror Realm. Of course, these are both uniques, so Mirror Realm kind of helps make another copy of the Geistwood, just in case if your opponent tries to Sinkhole it or something, you can at least guarantee that you'll have another copy. The Smokestacks of Gnaak, you obviously play that and just negate all abilities of sites nearby it. Oh, this is super fun. I just found out about this card the other day. It's called Boneyard. It's also a unique, but it has a Genesis effect. So each player may summon a minion from their cemetery here. Let's talk about this for a sec. If my opponent doesn't have any minions, that means I'm probably the only one that's going to be permitted to place a minion here, which is great because, again, if we use the Deathspeaker to revive all my opponent's minions, and if they're all banished and they have no minions left in their graveyard, this just becomes stronger because this is just going to guarantee that only I'm just going to play minions. Now, let's say worst case scenario, your opponent does have a minion and you both resurrect a minion here. That's okay, because ideally, what you want to try and resurrect are strong minions that'll have staying power. And if you resurrect Death Dealer, so for example, if your opponent brings back, well, this is a horrible example, because if they bring back a card with Genesis, they'll activate its effect, sure. However, if you play Death Dealer with the Boneyard, Death Dealer will kill all other minions, making it the only creature in play. So it kind of almost doesn't matter if your opponent has a minion to bring back. It only matters if they have a Genesis ability because they gain the value from it. But again, just being able to resurrect like certain minions could be crucial. Resurrecting a creature with lifelink or life gain can put you back into the game. Resurrecting a big creature like Nightmare can just guarantee that you're just going to go ahead and like just deal a efficient amount of damage to them as well. And so yeah, it's pretty sweet with the Death Dealer, and it fits on with the theme of the deck. Playing 1 Floodplain and 1 Sinkhole. Now, of course, if you're not playing the Pathfinder, you can play multiple copies of these, and I highly recommend that. I feel like you should always play Sinkhole at 2, because you always want to destroy sites. And Floodplain, you could play multiple, because it floods an adjacent site, and sometimes that could be annoying, because if you have the right setup, you can drown your opponent's minions, and you know, they're not going to have a good time with the game if you mess up their plan. Next, we have one of each of the towers. I've explained these before. I think that you should have one of each. If you want to play multiple copies, of course, don't play the Pathfinder, but I think it's kind of wrong. Just being able to play this and then draw a different copy with the same effect gives you more mana. And you don't want to draw into a copy and then not gain the full value. The Observatory and the Crossroads. Observatory manipulates the top of your spellbook. Crossroads manipulates the top of your site, which is good. I feel like the Crossroads is really good with Pathfinder because if you're just playing constantly from the top of your site, being able to control which sites you play is great. In the Observatory, since we're drawing a bunch of cards, being able to control which cards we draw can be very crucial in the game. Of course, playing the Rift Valley and the Cloud City. I've explained these in my past videos, but essentially this moves sites and this moves whatever's on it, which could be pretty relevant sometimes. Got the Color Out of Space. I originally played the Pristine Paradise, however I feel like the Color Out of Space is more convenient. Also more consistent as well, because it provides no mana or threshold unless it's adjacent to the void, which almost all the time it will be, unless your opponent ruins the card, which is okay. But being able to provide one of every threshold and 1 mana is super great, especially in a deck where we're playing all elements. And yeah, I'm just going to put these up real quick because the next lands that I'm going over are pretty self-explanatory. They're the only ones that we haven't gone over, and they are one of each of the double threshold lands. Just for mana fixing and threshold fixing, that's really it. And of course, if you're not playing the Pathfinder, you can play multiple copies of these, you can play multiple copies of Sinkhole, etc. And yeah, so this was my wild 4 avatar deck tech. I hope I explained the deck as efficiently as I could. Again, you can play either of these avatars and they'll work really great. The deck is meant to just draw spells, control graveyards, and just, you know, try to finish the game as quickly as possible. And I would say the one rule of thumb with this deck is that you always want to attack anytime you get the chance to. If you're just drawing cards and not attacking, you're not really progressing the game. Sure, you're progressing your card advantage, but if your opponent out-aggroes you, drawing cards is kind of pointless. So make sure that you attack as much as possible and as often as you can. And yeah, that's really it, guys. I also, again, I wanted to say thank you guys for, you know, giving me shout-outs and liking my videos and subscribing. I really, really appreciate it. I wasn't expecting this channel to really take off like that, so I really appreciate that. And yeah, this one was for you guys. I won't be posting any sorcery deck techs for a little while. I will, however, if you're interested in other TCGs like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh!, I will be having deck techs for those soon, so stay tuned for that. And I will also be doing an avatar tier list. That'll probably be my next sorcery video. And yeah, after that, I'm going to kind of take a little break. I'm waiting for the alpha boxes to be released so I can open them. I'll probably also do a video on the box opening and showing you guys what I pull. And yeah, I'll stop talking. I really appreciate everyone's time and consideration again. And I really hope that you guys enjoyed this deck tech. Stay safe, have a great week, and thank you guys.